Now,
Yeah, now. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly loud and clear.
Very good. Yeah, I had to change something.
No
Uh,
worries, no worries.
when I'm using Logic, I also always have to go back to 41. No, what is it? 44.1 kilohertz.
44.1, yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I was still on 48, so then it's all distorted.
Yeah, no worries. Well, thank you so much, Jost. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to have a conversation with me.
Hey, you're welcome. It's
It's
my
really an
pleasure.
honor, really an honor. So yeah, usually how we start this thing is we actually first I'm gonna tell you a little bit about who I am, just so that you get an
Mhm.
idea of who we are. So I'm Ben. I've been a drummer since I was about 4 years old, and I'm living in Valencia, Spain at the moment. But I'm from the United States. Grew up pretty much everywhere, but the last place I lived was in Philadelphia. And
Okay, nice.
yeah, so I was living here. I've been living here for about 5 years, and you know, as a musician and touring and whatnot, and I got together with the drumming community here quite often, as we usually do. We nerd out together,
Yeah.
and and I realized that with a couple other guys, we realized that there were no real media outlets for drummers in Spanish. There were very few resources, so we decided to start this online magazine in Spanish, so that we can kind of reach out to the Spanish-speaking world, and they can hear, the amazing drummers' thoughts like yours in their native language, of course. So yeah, basically that's the story. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I had to put on these big ass headphones because my in-ear headphones are in my suitcase, which got lost on my last journey to Spain, actually.
Oh yeah, because you were in the Alteza festival, right?
Right, and that was
Yeah.
amazing. But my suitcase didn't make it, although it was a direct flight, and so I'm still hoping to get it back. But it's kind of hard to get in touch with the airline.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. If you need any help, please let me know, because we can help you from this side. But yeah,
Uh,
somebody was probably taking a siesta when they shouldn't have. So
Yeah, maybe I don't know. I don't know. So the story was the suitcase somehow wound up in Madrid, where I flew to, and then when I got back home to Germany, I got a text message saying I should pick it up, but it didn't say where, and I already was back in Germany, but they meant pick it up in Spain, and
perfect.
yeah. And since then, I'm trying to reach them, and it's really hard to get in touch. And
Wow, that's been
yeah,
over a week. It's been, yeah, it's
no,
been
no,
two
it's
weeks.
it's it's close to like this Saturday. It's 3 weeks already. Yeah,
Oh my goodness, man. Well, I really hope your in-ears can come home to
yeah,
you and all the other
yeah,
personal things that you need, because that's a
yeah.
really a big pain in the ass, man.
It
But
is, and I
yeah,
learned my lesson. I bought a really nice, very big travel backpack, and now if I'm only traveling for like 2 days, I won't even bring a suitcase.
perfect. That's the
Yeah,
right thing to do.
yeah,
I traveled around the world, lived in China as well, and my main thing is if it doesn't fit in a backpack, then I don't really need it probably. So
yeah, yeah. So where did you live in China?
I lived in Guangzhou for a
Uh
little
huh.
bit in the south, and I lived in Qingdao in the north. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so
nice.
it's pretty cool. I saw a few clinics while I was there. I think Matt Garska came through, Benny
Yeah,
came through
yeah,
once, Jojo Mayer came through. But I was there
yeah.
for about 6 years, 3 years in the south and 3 years in the north.
Oh, really? And
It was
so
amazing.
do you speak Chinese now?
I do speak Chinese. I have about a C1 level of Chinese.
Great.
Yeah, yeah, I
That's
love it. It's really great. It's a great place. It's kind of amazing. It's like another planet. It's a love-hate thing. A lot of people either
yeah,
love it or they hate it. Yeah.
yeah.
Have
I've
you
been
been Have you
there.
been there? Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know, like 5 times maybe, or four or 5 times, and I loved many things about it. Not all of it, of course. It's
Of
very,
course.
very, very different. But
Of course.
I would, it all stopped because of COVID. But
Of course.
if I don't know if this situation is getting better, I'm sure I'll go back and do some more clinics.
Yeah, I'm sure you will, man.
Yeah,
You are a busy guy, and you're a sought
yeah,
after drummer. So just to start this thing off, without even mentioning drums, this is kind of like a little challenge. a test for you, if you will. Without even mentioning drums, tell me a little bit about yourself. You know, where you're living right now, where you grew up, what music did you listen to, hobbies that you've got, etc. Without mentioning drumming at all.
Okay. So I was born in Berlin, Germany, and I grew up in Germany, but not in Berlin because my parents left Berlin when I was 2 years old, and then they moved to a smaller, not even a town, like a village near a smaller town in the north of Germany, and that's where I grew up. And you know, I was like a normal child. I had some hobbies, and I liked to do sports. I was playing volleyball and you know, handball.
Yeah.
Do you call it that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, handball.
And I did that until it got too aggressive, because I wasn't like the biggest, strongest, tallest guy, and so when they got too big, it was getting too aggressive. Then I stopped, because I had this little music hobby also, and I didn't want to hurt my hands. And yeah, I started taking piano lessons when I was 8. And I enjoyed it, but I wasn't really practicing much. I was like a student that only, you know, plays once a week when they go to take the lesson, and maybe a little more, but not really. I wasn't really practicing. And I finished school in the same town, village, and then I moved to a different city in Germany to do my civil service, which you can do instead of going to the army. And everybody was obliged to do one or the other. And then I studied economics for 2 days, but I had this other thing that I wanted to do, and which I then pursued. And yeah, and I shouldn't mention it, but and then
Yeah.
after finishing civil service, I went to New York for 3 months. It's a great music city.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I think I've heard of it.
Yeah. And when I came back, I thought I might try being a musician for like 4 years, and so I was giving myself 4 years. I don't know why 4 years. It was just like, I thought maybe 4 years is a good time, and it will tell me if it works or not. And yeah, ever since I'm a musician.
Wow, that's amazing, man. That's a great story. Yeah. So my story is, you know, relatively chaotic in a way. I grew up in a military family. My father was in the Air Force. My parents are both kind of immigrants to the United States. My mom grew up in the United States, but my dad's from Indonesia. My mother, her family's from Ireland. And, you know, grew up traveling all around, and I had 3 older siblings who played who played music as well. A particular instrument which we should not mention.
All of them.
And yeah, and so all of them basically. And so then I ended up moving to China, as I said before. After my studies, I studied history actually for 4 years, and I studied to be a history teacher alongside of a parallel career, which should not be mentioned. And and I ended up in China teaching history at an international school. I met a beautiful Spanish woman who is not in this room right now, on the far side of the room. And she pretty much brought me here to Valencia, and I realized that here there's a lot of potential for being a musician. And I decided to be a full-time musician while I was here. And that's basically where I am right now. I've been in Spain for about 5 years. So,
all right.
So yeah, that's a little bit about my story. And how did you get started drumming? Now that we can mention drumming.
Okay, now we can. It was really like pretty normal, I think. A friend of mine had a little children's drum kit, and one day he said, "Hey, Jost, I'm gonna play some drums for you." And I'm like, okay. I wasn't really looking forward to it, but I was sitting there and thought, okay, it's only like 5 minutes, so why not? And I loved it so much, what he did.
And how old were you when that was?
I was 10.
10 years old, okay.
And he turned on some music and played to it, and I just thought it was beautiful and perfect and everything. And since then I wanted to play, really. It was that simple. And then there was a lot of music on TV, and I was always watching the drummers. I wasn't really into any specific drummer at that point, maybe except for Peter Criss, who was the drummer for Kiss, because as a child, I really liked, Kiss because of the makeup, but also the songs. I can still listen to some of the songs, and I think they are good songs. But of course, the drumming isn't exceptional or anything. It's just more like the band. It fits in with the band. And I kept asking my mother if I could have a drum set and play. And I kept insisting and asking. And one day she thought, why not? Because she likes music in general, and she thought it's a good hobby for children. And I agree. I totally agree. And if children have something which is something that they love doing, it doesn't have to be music, can be something else, then that's a good thing. And that's what she thought. And then my brother, who was a year younger, he got a bass and I got a drum set, and then we started playing in our basement. We just started playing. We didn't know what to do. We just played. And then after like a year, I think, it might have been less, might have been 6 months, she said, maybe you should take lessons, because then you will learn more. And then I took lessons, and that was really good. I took lessons for like 6 years with 2 different teachers. And because of the piano lessons I had taken before and I was still taking, I already knew notation. And I thought drumming notation is completely different, but it's not, right? It's still have the same note values, and you just don't have to play any specific notes when you play drums. And even when you play piano, you play more than one voice at a time. It's independence with the fingers, and sometimes you play 3 different voices with 2 hands. So there's different kind of independence going on, but it's still independence. And yeah, and then I learned drumming notation, and also, everything you can learn, like rudiments and snare pieces. And my second drum teacher was the one who got me into Steve Gadd and Dave Weckl, and he was a big fan of Jack DeJohnette. And so I got to know all these drummers and all the music that they play on, and yeah, that's how it went along, really.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing that you mentioned Steve Gadd and Dave Weckl, because those are kind of like the guys who are always in the roulette wheel of influences of anybody I've spoken to. I mean, I've interviewed Sarah Thaler, I've interviewed Mike Johnston, I've interviewed Kristen Neddins, and all of them mention, Steve Gadd, Dave Weckl, Vinny Colaiuta, of course, is on there. So it's like these are just the guys, right, that are just like always in our first, at least in the first serious influence for drumming, right? Because it always starts with like kind of a more mainstream influence, like you said, like Kiss for you was kind of like that influence and for me, I guess that influence was, I mean mainstream in a classic sense with John Bonham for me. But it was kind of, there's that mainstream influence, and then there's kind of like that really technical, like, you're my god of abilities of influence. And that's interesting that you mentioned those 2 who have constantly come up in conversation.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if this still is the case if you talk to like a drummer who's like 20 now. I'm not sure about that.
Right, exactly. I mean, Miguel Lamas, I'm sure I mean, he's a younger guy, but he's, of course, he's a guy who's, pretty well versed, and I wouldn't say he's that. I guess he's kind of like in between, like being really young now and, kind of starting to mature a little bit, at least in that sense. But he's like Vinny Colaiuta. He's got these guys, Dave Weckl, in his wheelhouse as well. I've had a conversation with him as well. But it would be interesting to see the guys going into music school now, like who are their influences? Are they the same? That's a really good question.
Probably not. I think they have different people they are listening to. They might, or they will probably discover Steve Gadd and Dave Weckl and Vinny Colaiuta maybe a little later. I'm not sure. It's just a guess. Right.
Me too. I would probably guess about the same exact thing. Now, if you hadn't taken this road as to be a musician and to be a professional drummer, what would you have liked to have pursued as a career? Imagine you couldn't be a drummer, or for some reason the road took you a different path. What would you have done?
I don't really know. I think I like law, and I like the structure and the logics in law. That's something I like because you have to really know your way around, and it somehow makes sense. That might have been one thing, but it really didn't get to this. I didn't have to answer that question ever.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And it's a difficult question
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah, of course. I understand. I mean, for me, I studied history, so when I was teaching history, it was like my second passion. I was really enjoying being in a classroom and kind of teaching people history, which was something that I really love to do. But yeah, if somebody were to ask me that an alternative career, I don't know what I would choose. Maybe an engineer. I really liked science. I was really big into spaceships and these kind of things. Maybe an astronaut. Who knows?
Yeah.
But very cool. The law. That's a new one. That's really interesting. So you've toured around the world with so many great, amazing artists. You played loads of genres. You've taken your teaching craft to clinics and stuff all around the world. You've been an amazing clinician in many occasions. And obviously, you're really well known as a great sessions drummer. On a lot of albums, including your own, which we'll talk about in a second. Where are you most comfortable as a professional drummer and as a musician? Are you most comfortable on stage, live? Are you most comfortable in a studio, or are you most comfortable in a classroom sense as a clinician or an educator?
Okay, it really depends. I feel very comfortable in the studio, but not every kind of music I record in the studio I would want to play live, because there's a certain kind of pop music which is interesting to create in the studio, and it's very sound driven, and the drumming is very simple in a way that you don't play many notes. It's not simple because you still have to hit the right feel and make a groove. But this kind of music, when it's too repetitive, so when every concert is basically the same, is not what I enjoy most when I play on stage. So when it comes to playing on stage, I like music where I can improvise a little more, where maybe like energetic fills are allowed in a sense that they fit into the style of music that I play. So that's what I enjoy more when I play live. So, in the studio it's okay, but you don't get to play the songs like 50 times. Like when you're on tour, you play, every night you play the same song. So you play it maybe like 3 or 4 times in the studio, and then it's still fresh and enjoyable. So yeah, this kind of music, when it's too much of the same, I don't really enjoy playing live. But as I said, live is more music where I can improvise. And then when it comes to live, it's very important that I feel that the artist I play for appreciates the band. That's not always the case. Sometimes singers or artists are not really interested in the band. They just need good musicians. They're not interested in the players exactly and in their personalities. So that's not what I like. What I really like, I try to stay away from these situations. And if I end up in a situation like this, then I feel like, okay, this is really not about me being part of the music. Then I will not continue playing this or for this artist, because we only live once, and it's not worth it for me. And I really feel comfortable teaching and also doing clinics. So I really like that part of my career. So. But I'm glad that I'm doing a mix, and that it's not always the same.
Of course, yeah. I mean, variety is the spice of life, right? I mean, it's the way that we're able to enjoy every moment, because otherwise it becomes very monotonous, and it's kind of it becomes boring, and you stop enjoying it. It's like you were saying before, where everything is, if you play the same kind of music over and over again, it gets kind of boring, in a musical sense and an actual life sense. And speaking about music genres specifically, where do you find yourself most comfortable in genres? Like, what would you say your most comfortable genre playing is?
I think it doesn't really have to do with the genre first. It's first comes the appreciation part that I spoke about earlier. So if you really feel like everybody on stage is doing this together and everybody's contribution to the music is important and valued, then that's the best feeling, I think. And then if some improvisation is allowed, that's even better. So, but I don't know. I'm good when I play music which has some kind of a backbeat. It doesn't have to be on 2 and 4, but I'm not best at playing jazz, so that's not my first thing. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, everything that you're mentioning about where you're most comfortable is really close to the band that you just went on tour with, right? Remind me the name. It's escaping me right now.
You mean the band in Germany, Jan Delay and Disco Number One?
That's it. Yeah. It seems like I mean, the stuff that you post is just amazing. You just like a king of like just nailing it and getting that fill in. That's really tasty, but you're just like you just fit it right back in, right with the backbeat, which is you know, sometimes I see some stuff I'm like, man, that is so tasty.
Thanks.
So it's really interesting to know what you've recently been on tour with, you know, and like seeing the content you've been posting and then hearing your thoughts about where you're kind of most comfortable. And it's like there's a backbeat in that, but at the same time you've got that freedom to kind of like just kind of let loose a little bit with keeping it, you know, tasty space, you know what I mean, losing that space to kind of add a little bit of flavor but not, you know, oversalt it too much, you know.
Yeah, that's a perfect fit, really, that band. And so the artists I'm playing for, he's really into energy, I would say. So he really also likes me to, like in some parts, it's even okay to change up the groove, you know. And he also likes it when it's a surprise for him and for everybody. So he's into that. It doesn't have to be the same always.
Right, he's into the improv, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's certain the rest of the band, they are playing to what I play, and if there's a certain bass drum figure which is required for the song, then I will also always play that, right? I won't change that, but in some parts it's okay to change it around a little bit.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah, and the first and most important thing is always to play the right tempo and to make it groove. That's even for the fills, right? They have to groove.
Exactly, has to groove always, yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm happy playing that band. It's a great band and it's quite well known, or it's very well known in Germany, and so all the circumstances are really good, and that makes it more fun, even, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Big stages, lots of spectators, great shows, you know, good conditions, great sound. I'm sure the band sounds great from what I've, you know, seen. Would love to see that band live. Seems like you said, they got lots of energy. It's right up my alley. It's really seems cool.
I guess so. I get lots of compliments on the sound. So our sound guy is really good, and we have a very good monitor guy. So the monitor sound is really good too. So it's very enjoyable to play that. Yeah. Wonderful.
Now tell us about your latest record, your latest musical creation of your own, the Check-In. It's the last. I mean, it's the most recent work that you've done, but the last one you did was almost 10 years ago. Before that, so
no. It's really my first solo.
Oh, okay, it's the first solo album. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
So I was always, you know, creating music with bands. Even in the band we just talked about, I'm part of the composing process, and I always wanted to record an album, and I was too afraid really to start it because it's so much work and I had to discover so much unknown territory. And one day I finally just started, and then it came out this April, and I started in 2018, and it takes me a lot of time to write the songs. It just because I try this and I try that, and then until I'm happy, and then if you all do it by yourself, it's a lot of work. But I'm really happy that I did it, and now we're starting to play live with the material, and really also new experience, and I really enjoy that. And I'm very happy, still very happy with the album. There's only very little things I would change, right, if I could do it again. But these are more the things where I would keep it even simpler than compared to how I played. That's the only thing where I felt like I could have played less in this song or that song. But everything else is really good, and I'm already starting to work on a new album, because it can't be the only one. There has to be more, right? Yeah.
That's great. So no, go ahead, continue, sorry.
So for me, the songs came first, and then I was trying to find drum parts that fit the songs, and also drum parts which are not too obvious. I mean, that have some specialty in them without taking away from the song. So I was trying to do that because, I'm a drummer, so I enjoy playing things that might not be too obvious. But I once read an interview with a drummer who was also talking about his solo record, and he said he was trying to come up with the most complicated drum parts for the compositions. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's not at all what I was trying to do. I was more like, okay, I had to put on the drumming hat again when I was creating the drum parts, because I was like totally into the composition process and not into how do I play that. And does it make sense? I hope
it does. It does. It makes perfect sense. Yeah, I love that. No, but it's actually interesting that you mentioned putting on the drumming hat, because my next question was, as a drummer, right, writing your own material, it's a perspective, it's a point of view from the composition point of view, at least, that's not so common when you look at the universe of musical compositions, right? It usually starts with or some kind of melodic instrument, or someone who plays a melodic instrument. So that usually the main composer is a piano player, or a guitarist, or a singer-songwriter. So how do you approach the writing process as a drummer when you're making music that has melodies? Like, how do you approach that specifically?
I'm going to answer the question in a second, but that was the most difficult part, to find out which instruments could carry the melodies, because as drummers we can't, only if we sing, right? And so I use the piano. I'm playing piano. As I said, that was my first instrument, and I'm not. So the sounds I use when I compose, I don't go into detail too much, because I know there's gonna be musicians who play that melody, either guitar or keys. Really, there's some saxophones on the album, but they don't. The saxophone or the horns in general, they don't play the melodies as a section. They do, but not as single instruments. There's no saxophone playing a single melody, right? And so I just use the piano, keyboard, and then I even used some really bad sounding electric guitar, which is in Logic, just to get an idea.
I know, I'm familiar with that sound. Yeah, it's quite bad. Yeah.
It's very crappy, but still it works for the composition process. Yeah. So
that's great. I understand.
Yeah, that's what I really do. And for some songs, I was getting together with two musician friends of mine, and we were just jamming and developing parts for songs. And sometimes we would have like one good idea, and sometimes two ideas which were strung together, and then I would use these as the basis for the song, and then come up with additional parts and rearrange the melody and maybe add some melody parts and all of it.
And how was the original composition versus the end result? I mean, did your musicians who came into the studio, I'm sure things flexed and kind of evolved over time, yeah? Was there some tunes that it was pretty similar, and some tunes that it became more complex over time?
You mean similar from what we did in the session until... I mean like session, like an improv, right? Yeah, no, it was very, very different.
Gotcha. Yeah.
From the improv. So it was really just a starting point, really. And then from then on, I was taking it into various different directions.
Wonderful. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you do is amazing. So I'm really,
Oh, come on.
seriously, no, like honestly, it's very, very good. And I mean, from a drummer's perspective, it's always interesting when I'm confronted with a drummer who wrote his own music, because I'm also a musician and I write my own stuff. So it's just interesting to see the process and to see, you know, how do you approach it being the lead man of the project when you're not a melodic thing. So that's very interesting. I play the piano, but not very well. And most of my melodies are in my head, you know, so it's like transcribing those melodies and getting them out of my computer into, you know, something that actually makes sense. So it's always interesting to hear the input from other musicians who are doing things like that and are able to translate those melodies to other instruments.
The best advice is you have to work on it, and then publish it. You have to finish it and then publish it. That's the key. Because if you don't, because you learn so much, but if you don't, you're always stuck halfway, really. Yeah. I know tons of drummers actually who have their own music, right? And they don't end up finishing it. It's interesting you said that, because it ends up going halfway. And they're like, well, I'm gonna leave it, and then it just sits there and doesn't do anything. Yeah, it's like you said, you got to just release it. It's hard. It can be hard because maybe like two-thirds of the song are there, and then you feel like there's something missing, and probably you're right. But then finding the missing part is really hard and time-consuming.
Totally. I'll try. Yeah. I'll try not to take up too much more of your time. I know you have to go. So usually what we do is, with the last interviewer, they ask a question to the next interviewee, the person that will be interviewed, without knowing who it is. So it's kind of a general mysterious question. And Sarah Thaler was the last person to ask a question. And she's asking you, how have you adapted to the current music scene? With the coronavirus, with everything, with how have you adapted during this last 2 years of craziness?
I haven't really. I have to say I didn't want to. So one way of adapting would have been to really get into teaching via Skype or Zoom, and developing a great setup which works nicely. And so I didn't want to do that. So. And there were other parts in my career which I could still do, because like writing books or writing music, that hasn't been affected really. So I didn't adapt. I have to admit I didn't, and I didn't want to. So I feel like music is still the best when you share it with people who are in the same room.
Of course.
And that's where the magic happens, and that's like a single moment in time that all of the people that are in the room share. And then after you're done, it's done. It's finished. It's gone basically. Okay, you might have recorded it and maybe you published some of it, but still it's not the same. So I really like that thought, and that's why I didn't want to adapt too much.
Very good. Very good. You were stubborn. You're like, I will not.
I will not. No, because even teaching via Zoom, I didn't enjoy, because we can't play together. Right. And what I enjoy when I teach is that it's really the communication between me and the student. And it's also the playing together and hearing how they sound. They hear how I sound, and I can help them, and maybe I can learn something from them, but all of this is not really working online.
Of course, yeah, you lose that connection, and it's very hard to describe what you lose exactly, because you're technically doing the same things, but it's just so disconnected. You know, I also had to. I partially adapted, I should say, to this, having online drum classes, but I was confined to my home, and I don't have my studio in my home. So I had to build a makeshift drum set out of pots and pans from the kitchen, a few practice pads that I had in the home, and I used a huge, one of these poof pillows from the floor, like a dog pillow basically, as the bass drum. and
Yeah.
that I put a camera in the corner of the room that was connected to microphones and everything, and that's what I had to do. But again, it felt more like a circus show than it did an actual class. And after a while, I just said, no, let's just wait until we could be in person, and we've started in-person classes already, which is great. But it's I totally understand your reluctance to make that shift. And not now, a lot of people they made that adaptation and they've kind of stayed there. And I think that's, I mean, to each his own in the end, but I think we're losing a little bit something there. And with the concerts also, the same idea. These live shows people were putting online, it was kind of like, it's a dangerous place to go, because people are now thinking that culture is free. So I agree with you completely, 100%.
Yeah, and I think there are certain things in life that you can't do online. It's not digital. Music is kind of very analog in a way. Of course, I know that musical is digital, right? I don't mean it in that sense, but
of course,
it's like being together with other people, and
that's
can't
the
beat
point.
that.
Yeah. Exactly, that's the point. Wonderful, thank you. That's excellent. So we're gonna end here with a little survey that we usually do for our guests. Okay, and basically, I will say it's kind of like a word association. So I will say a word, and you will just tell me your preferred thing or whatever that is, or the first thing that pops into your head.
Okay.
So favorite drumstick.
Vic Firth.
Can you be specific? The type?
5B wood tip.
Nice one.
That was quick.
That was very quick. You knew that one right away. Favorite drummer?
Vinny Colaiuta.
Very nice.
And you know that this is the question is unfair, but I had to answer it. So
no,
okay.
I know. I have to say it. I didn't come up with the actual survey per se.
It's okay.
But okay. I know these kind of things. I mean, whenever people say like, favorite band, which is the next question. But these kind of things like, fuck, this is such an unfair question.
Yeah.
But yeah, so favorite band when you were growing up, which I think I know already, but go ahead.
I'd say Sting. Sting from
nice.
the first solo band, which is with Omar Hakim, Daryl Jones, Branford Marsalis, and Kenny Kirkland.
Okay, wonderful. Recent video or piece of news that blew your mind recently?
Piece of news that blew my mind. Yeah, okay. It was the storm on the Capitol in the US.
Ooh.
That blew my mind.
Okay, yep. Mine as well. Being an American and everything, yeah. The Beatles, oh man, that was just a terrible moment. I was like, my jaw dropped when I saw that.
And not in a good way.
No, not in a good way at all. No. Okay, and this is a kind of another silly question, which you're gonna roll your eyes to for sure.
I'm looking forward to it.
Amazing. Brace yourself. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Eric Clapton, and Jimi Hendrix are all trapped inside a burning building. You can only save one. Who do you save?
The Beatles.
Oh, always. It always ends up being like this.
Yeah. After I even didn't. I stopped listening when you said the Beatles, and then I stopped listening because
you knew the answer.
Yeah.
All right. Define yourself in one word.
Yeah, right. Define myself in one word. Focused.
Very nice. I could see that. Is it true that drummers are more intelligent and more attractive than bass players?
Of course.
Done. That was an easy one. Don't tell your brother that. Is he still a bass player? No,
he's a guitar. He turned into a guitar player because he realized.
Yeah, he realized he knew what the world was asking of him. So now I'm going to give you some names, okay? And you're going to have to word associate them. You can give me an adjective or something, whatever you think. First thing that comes to your mind. Benny Greb.
Warm.
Yes, he is. Jason McGurr. Do you know who Jason McGurr is?
No, okay. Sorry.
We'll eliminate that one from the list. Matt Garska.
Amazing.
Okay. Anika Niles.
Impressive.
Chris Coleman.
Energetic.
Good. Dave Weckl.
Class.
Yes, he is. Kristen Neddens. You know her, yes?
Familiar.
Yes.
I say familiar.
Okay. You are familiar with her, and you are familiar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Miguel Lamas.
Only one word, right? That's hard. That's really hard.
Yeah, no, it's hard. It's a challenge. We like to challenge you.
Yeah. Versatile.
Very nice. Yes, he is. Do you know who El Estepario Siberiano is?
Yeah, I know him from Instagram, right?
Yes, from Instagram. Yeah, who lives in Valencia, actually. Yeah.
Only one word. It's so. I say.
Focus yourself. You are focused.
Yeah. I used a lot of adjectives already. I don't want to use any of them again. I would say, I just say fast.
Yeah. Cool. Marco Miniman.
Nerdy. Is that's also in a good way, right?
Yeah. I know I know exactly what you mean. Yes, in a good way. It's a good thing. Sarah Thauer.
Explosive.
And Bateristas magazine.
Kind.
Thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, that's enough for one interview, and I really appreciate the time that you gave to us, to me specifically, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to meeting you someday when next time you come back to Spain. I meant to go to Alteza, but with my wife being how she is right now in the state that she is, we're still haven't given birth yet. Still very much pregnant. Yeah, because we had a false alarm, as you know, the other day.
Yeah.
But now everything is fine, and we're still waiting for that day. So essentially, we're just gonna keep playing the waiting game.
What's the scheduled date?
Scheduled date is the 13th of October, but hopefully it'll be around then. A couple of days earlier, a couple of days later. So yeah, we're really excited. And before we go anywhere, we're gonna take a picture, if you don't mind, so we can post it. So we're gonna give a little screenshot here, imagining that we're actually in a photograph together, and I'll just count down. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Got it. Perfect.
Thanks. That's the Dom Famularo gesture.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jost. I really appreciate it, man.
I wish you all the best for your family, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Jost. Take care, okay?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.